You a football fan at all, Charity?
So I like the Cowboys. I don't know if that's going to be an issue or not.
Did you like watch the Super Bowl and stuff like that, or you're not really that into professional sports?
Well, the Super Bowl was in Atlanta, so I was actually avoiding everyone and everything because traffic was so bad.
Yeah, it was crazy, huh?
Yeah, it was really bad.
And it's like when they have the Super Bowl, it's like a week-long thing, right?
Oh yeah, like there's like concerts every night. But I got back that Wednesday that before the weekend. So when I got back, like even getting out of the airport was crazy. And I was like, all right, so this is how my weekend's gonna be. Just gonna stay home, hibernate.
What are some things that you've been doing? Like obviously a lot of people that are watching this right now have seen you on the Titan Games and stuff like that. What is a progression to get on a TV show like that?
I'm sure it was different for each competitor, but for me, they had a scout that sought me out, and he essentially harassed me until I gave him a response. So at first, it was just like, oh, this can't be for real. He slid into my DMs, and I was like, this isn't legit. And then he sent me an email. I was like, oh, maybe it is. But I didn't respond. And then he sent me another email to another email that I had that he found me on LinkedIn, and just continued to talk to me about it. And we went back and forth. And then honestly, it was the convincing of friends and family that I was like, you know what? I got nothing to lose. I'll give it a shot. We'll see. They're not going to choose me. And I ended up getting chosen.
Oh, so you didn't need to send, like, did you? Because I know there was a process where a lot of people send in video and they did all that. You got scouted.
I got scouted, yeah.
Holy crap.
Yeah, we did a Skype interview, and that was like my audition essentially, where they just interviewed me live, and I got to talk to someone and go back and forth, and yeah, it just all. I guess the cards are in my favor. You know, it all played out.
Yeah, that's amazing.
You must have been on their radar just because of the stuff you've done. You know, the strongman stuff and things like that, right?
And that's what they mentioned. They said they were looking for different strength athletes and competitors, and I had come up on their search, so.
Is this hurt? You know, you're doing this like Mount Olympus thing, I believe it's called.
Yeah, it was
and
terrible.
You're on these like hard logs, and like you're just jumping and landing on like your shin. I mean, that looks like it hurts really bad.
My knee was actually swollen for 3 weeks after that event because I had landed on it, and I thought I had a bone spur and got it examined and everything. So might have to go get it cleaned out actually in a little bit.
That's crazy looking. Go ahead.
When I was watching this, like this event was crazy too, because she got to the top before you. And I remember when I first saw it, I was like, oh shit, is she going to actually be able to get through? What was like going through your head when you saw you were behind her?
You know, like as a competitor, you just have to focus on yourself, right? Mm-hmm. So it's like I was trying my best not to focus on where she was or what she was doing. And I was just focused on like, you know what, this is what I have to do. This is what's in front of me. And just focus on each step by step to figure out, okay, how am I going to get this to work? And of course, like when you fall on the barrels, what you don't realize is like it takes so much energy to get out of those barrels that it's like I was totally gassed. Like I had a 102 fever. I had a medic in my room that morning with an IV in my arm.
Wow.
And then they were like, well, you still got to compete. And you know, it's just you, the competitor takes over and you're like, you know what, I got to get through this. Whatever it takes, I got to get through this.
Yeah, you gained a lot of ground right there. I remember, you know, when I was watching this, I was like, and this is the first show, right? This is the first show that they ever aired. And I remember as I was watching it, I'm watching a couple things. And I'm kind of fearful for you because I'm like, these aren't some of her strengths.
my face is like, I'm over it. Yeah. So over this.
But then as it progressed and it got into some of the stronger events, I was like, oh, she's gonna, she'll be able to gain ground on this. And as you were coming off these slides right here and stuff, it was really cool to watch what happens with this part of the event.
This is beautiful.
Why are you laughing so much? Is it funny to watch yourself?
Yeah, I'm laughing at myself like the pure exhaustion. And then I was like, oh. This is easy.
Yeah, this part.
Oh my God.
Watching this part on TV was like confusing. I was like, what's wrong with the other girl? Like, what happened to What happened to
And
that
I
poor
was like,
girl?
oh, let me get my glasses here.
Did you see the face of that caster, the white guy?
I
He's
know.
just
He's like,
he didn't know what to say.
Yeah.
literally, like the crowd went silent for a split second when that happened, and then it's like it's all like uproar from there. Poor Nikki, she shattered her finger trying to drag
Oh,
that
no.
ball. Yeah,
And that ball, how much does that thing weigh?
250.
Damn. And yeah, you dragged like it was nothing. It looked like you could have smoked a cigarette while you were dragging.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, I think my best like comment that I got from that was like, "You look like me dragging my toddler through the mall." And I was like, "Yep."
Yeah. Are you forever ready for like all of the old ball and chain jokes that are going to be coming out your way after this?
Yeah. When I was at the LA Fit Expo, it was like I was just waiting. Like it was every single person. Like I say on Titan Games, and I was waiting for it, like ball and chain.
Yeah.
Did you have to do anything like particular, or did you do anything in training leading up to this to like get your cardio ready, coming from a strength background?
Well, we had no idea what we were going up to, right? And you don't find out what the challenges are until you show up to do the challenge. Like you've got 5 minutes of preparation. And yeah, pure exhaustion. But, so there really was like no way. And even after the combine, like we were scouted out, they sent us to a combine, we competed in teams. And then from our, performance in the combine, they selected us, like handpicked us out of teams. And, so, there was really nothing to gear us up to. Okay. Like I trained for a month before they sent me out there. So really it was just like rest, recovery, like making sure that like I was okay. But what I had been doing is swimming again. And I'm not like an avid runner or anything like that, clearly. But I had been swimming again, and I had gotten actually my open water swim up to a mile before this competition. And that's like a lot of like lung endurance and capacity, right? And so it's like, physically, a lot of the other competitors kind of like were looking at me like, oh, she's not going to last. Like, she doesn't have any endurance, blah, blah, blah. But what you don't realize about swimmers is like, none of them really look, like they've got a lot of endurance or anything like that. But they've got so much lung endurance. And I think that's honestly what helped me through this competition.
Did you have a swimming background too, a little bit?
Yeah. So in college, I was a U.S. Master swimmer, and that's actually what got me into powerlifting.
Oh, okay, cool. Yeah, and then you did powerlifting for a while, and then what was the leap towards strongman?
I had done a powerlifting meet, and then I was just like, I want something more, and just something in me like always wants to be challenged, right? And it's like, the 3 lifts were like they're the fundamental basics of every sport, and it was like, okay, well, I want something more. I was a great box jumper, like great sprinter, I was swimming background, so I was like, and I want to do something that like channels that athlete in me. And I got pushed towards strongman, and then I just fell in love with it because it was so dynamic. And then when I decided to like retire from strongman for my heart, just because like with cardiac arrhythmia and everything else, it's not good to push yourself like that apparently. And I was like, I love the aspects that I took from strongman, the training and the endurance, and just being able to carry really awkward objects for distances and time, and I love that.
What's with this cardiac arrhythmia? What does this mean? What do you have going on?
So I have atrial fibrillation, which essentially your atrium and your ventricles don't communicate well, and you can have like lapses in your heart rate. So it's either too fast or too slow, so cardiac arrhythmia, and it makes you prone to blood clots and stroke. So for me, I was actually prepared to go to World's Strongest Woman, and I was gearing up for that, and I was the strongest I'd ever been, and I was doing a log press, and I passed out doing a log press, and that's never happened to me before, and my blood pressure had just gotten so high that like my heart couldn't slow down again, and I had to sit down and like completely like gear into that, okay, like breathing, making sure I slow this down, everything else, because I'm against taking beta blockers. I was against, getting, the heart surgery and everything else. So it's like, okay, I've got to learn how to control this better. So I went to go see my cardiologist, and he's like, you're essentially a ticking time bomb. I hope you realize this. And when he said that to me, like, it's like, oh my gosh, like here I am in my mid-20s, and you're telling me that I'm a ticking time bomb. And he was like, you're essentially playing with fire. Like, you're out here, you're pushing yourself to your limit, to your absolute capacity. He's like, and you have a heart that's defected. It's not going to work like somebody else's
You're just
heart.
born that way?
Yeah, they said it's hereditary. For me, like, it makes sense because I remember as a kid, like, I always thought my cardio was just really bad. Like, I always thought that was just something that I struggled with. And even in swimming, like, I had to work really hard to control my breathing and control my heart rate. And it wasn't until, like, I had gotten that diagnosis when I was 17 that things started to make sense. And it's like, that's why. Okay.
Did you think you had other things going on? Like, did you have to go to the doctor a lot? Did you think you had like asthma and things like that?
Yeah, so it does feel like I actually do have like workout-induced asthma from it, and because it does affect like your lung capacity and like how you're able to like
Workout-induced asthma, no offense, sounds like a fat guy problem, right? It sounds like a fat powerlifter problem, right?
Yeah.
And it's like, of course, when you work out, you can't breathe well.
And I've had people, like, I've actually had a lot of guys tell me, they're like, you know what that means? You're just out of shape. And
that's what it sounds like, right?
Yeah, and I've had that comment all the time, and I'm like, all right,
like, no, you bastard.
Until you literally can't breathe.
Right. Yeah.
And then you want to go into panic mode, and then, like, for me, that's super dangerous. So I always have my inhaler with me, like, just in case. During the Titan Games, I literally hit that inhaler after every competition, because your heart rate was spiked so high during every event. And the medic team knew about my condition. Like, we did a heart scan, everything right before I went out there. So they made sure I was good before I went out there. But they also knew the risks. So they were there waiting on the sidelines just in case Charity passes out while she's out there.
Wow.
What other like precautionary measures do you need to like take before, competing or doing certain like training sessions to just make sure that you can stay in the best state possible and it doesn't happen?
I mean, just like anything, there's no way to guarantee that something's not going to happen. I mean, just like with my hamstring this weekend. But what I've learned is like actually through yoga and swimming is learning to control my breathing and learning those breathing techniques, and then to slow down your heart rate. You can literally slow down your heart rate with your breathing, and learning those tactics has just saved me countless times, because if you're in control of your body, then you have better control over how it's going to function, how it's going to treat you. And if you're not allowing a situation to freak you out or get you stressed or something like that, then it's not going to affect your heart as severely as someone who has zero control.
Was it pretty nerve-wracking just because you're on TV as well? Like, it's TV production, right?
Yes, and like, it's nervous like before you go out there, but I mean, when I compete, like, I don't see anything else, Like, I don't notice anybody, I don't see anything, I don't hear anything. Like, I'm just so zeroed in on what my task is that nothing else distracts me. So that didn't really affect me at all. It was just gearing up to, like, I have no idea what I'm walking into. Like, zero clue. Like, I've never done this before. I have no idea what it's going to be like, but I'll be okay.
How does it work competition-wise? Like, I saw you do, like, the one competition. I don't know if I've seen you do more than that or if it just hasn't aired yet.
So there were several competitions that we did in that, that you wanted each competitor to have to go through the same challenges. Obviously in finals, like, there's a few that I have to go through, just because, like, it's different people, different competitors, and they want you to experience the same level of competition that they have.
That looks pretty challenging, carrying those chains
So
up the
this
stairs.
is like a throwback to strongman back in like the 80s. Yeah, so back when Kaz was doing all of it, and I had actually remembered seeing that and being like, wait a minute, like, this was made for me. And I just remember feeling that confidence in this one, because I was like, you know what, like, if anybody can do this one, I can do this one.
Yeah.
How heavy is that one?
Oh, it was so heavy, but it's just the fact that the chains are like pulling you back, right? Like, it's not like a yoke where everything's like stationary and attached. Like, it's literally swinging behind you. You have to wait for it to catch up.
How did it feel like being in front of because I'm guessing this is the biggest crowd you've ever competed in, like, right?
Slightly.
How was that for you? Like, when you first went out and you did your first event in front of everybody, were you even thinking about that, or were you zoned in?
I was so zoned in. Like, during this one, this was the first one, like, I didn't even really notice anybody, but this was a great intro to the games for me, because it was like, this honestly, like, after talking to everybody in the production, they're like, this is one of the hardest challenges that they had. And just because like we're doing the same exact weight the men are doing, and they were like, no, this is the hardest challenge that we have. And even their stunts that they had perform on this, like some of them couldn't even finish it. So knowing that and knowing that like I was the first woman to go up there and I was the first woman to complete it was so empowering for me. But it also like I knew how much of myself that it took to complete that, and it took a lot from me. So I was like, you know what, like I'm gonna have to give my all in these challenges. Like this isn't just like some cheap game show where it's gonna be easy. Like I'm gonna have to give my all to complete these challenges.
Yeah, these weights are heavy, right?
Oh yeah,
That's what I was gonna ask. Was there anything outside of the ball and chain thing that was like, are you guys serious? Like you're like, is this supposed to be hard?
No, honestly, like they were all super hard challenges, and then when you go into the finals, like they actually make things even harder.
Oh, okay.
So they're like, "Oh, you're in the finals now, so let's just amp everything up a few notches."
Yeah, because I had seen I can't remember the name. It's on Netflix. It's another like competitor show, but they have like a trainer and a trainee, and they're like one of the events was like, okay, you guys together are gonna have to squat 225, and it was like. Well, I mean, yeah, I think they'll survive. So I was just curious because, like, some of the sets on this show are like really massive. So I'm like, okay, did you pick up like I don't know, like a hammer or something? It's like, oh wait, this is fake.
No, like everything, like, and I think that's the thing. Like, we all expected it to be like that, and it wasn't.
You expected it to be a little showy, right?
Yeah, like we really like theatrical, right? You know, things to be a little bit, you know, like, oh, this will be easy, and then you get there and it's like, oh my gosh, this is so hard. Like even that wall, they let us push the wall just to show us that it was a heavy wall. And I mean, that wall was like 1,500 pounds.
Oh my God.
And you have like, and so like when you watch it, it's like, okay, I'm going to have to push it, let it come back, and then ride it all the way up. And a lot of girls didn't have the power to just push it over that second wind. And like I started climbing as soon as it was going over, like, and I just learned that from that first time going up Mount Olympus. I was like, okay, like the next time I get up to that wall, like I'm gonna have to start climbing as soon as it's going down. And you just like pick up on things like that to carry with you.
The Rock ain't playing with this.
No.
How the hell does The Rock do this? Like his schedule seems insane. So I mean, is he there a lot?
Yeah, I mean, he was there. Like we were all there till like 4 a.m.
Yeah.
Like you know he put in the hours as well. Like it's crazy, you know, his schedule, working on a million different things at once. And then it humbles you because like you at this point, like you start seeing people, you know, unravel, and you start seeing like characters really their true character.
People are getting frustrated. They're hungry. They're tired.
Yeah. And, you know, and you just see like the complainers, you know, coming out. And my perspective was like, none of us want to be here. You know, like none of us are happy to be here at 3 a.m. with one meal in our system and like 3 hours of sleep. You know, the production guys don't want to be here. Wardrobe doesn't want to be here. Hair and makeup's ready to go. You know, Dwayne Johnson's here and he's hungry. I'm like, none of us want to be here. So there's no reason to complain or like be a whiner or like make all the other people like miserable just because you are.
Yeah, you already don't feel like being there. There's no reason to make everything
exactly. Like you might as well just take
worse.
it for what it is and just be a good sport.
What like you know, after doing a show like that, like you know, what has kind of happened, like you know, via like your social media and stuff like that? I'm sure a lot of that has grown, and then also just being a female. I mean, have you had any like weird predicaments happen because of being on the show, like just stalkers or something crazy like that?
Funny you say that. I'll get to that. But I think the main thing that happened, I was a little nervous, especially with the show airing, because like that was like, as a female, that was like the heaviest weight I had been in my competition career, period.
Oh, your body weight.
Yeah. And I knew that like I wasn't shredded like the other female competitors. You know, I didn't have like that aesthetic. And I was really concerned how the public, because, you know, our public's pretty critical, how they would take me, how they would accept me. And the amount of women that reached out to me and said that I inspired them to get healthy and that showed them that because in their heads, they're never going to be skinny, you know, in their heads, they're never going to look like a model, you know. So the fact that like I looked human inspired them because it was like, you beat the model. They're like, you did that and you were better than them. They were like, so that means I can be something. And I think that, like, it was so overwhelming. And then, you know, amount of people that have heart issues that reached out to me, and they were like, I thought I would never be able to go to the gym. I thought I was, like, destined to just sit at home, take beta blockers, do this, you know, get a pacemaker. And now I have an option. I can actually go lift weights. Like, I don't have to just do low intensity cardio. Like, I just have to wear a heart rate monitor. I just have to be more careful, but I can do things. That was like the best thing for me. And Dwayne Johnson and I actually had a conversation about that. It was just like, I just thanked him because he was asking me how I was handling everything, and, you know, the, like, my response, like, from people. And it was just like, dude, like, you've given me an outlet and a platform to be able to show my heart to this, like, this population where everyone's afraid to go to the gym. Everyone's afraid to, like, go out there and try something, and now they're not. Now, of course, like, there have been a few, like...
I just want to interject on something you said.
Yeah.
So, you know, people saying that you beat the model, right? Yeah, that girl was gorgeous, right? Wonderful physique, right? But I think the way that you beat her, I think, is, like, kind of the key, right? Like, you never gave up.
Yeah.
Obviously, you were dying a couple times in there, right? We
Yeah,
could see it in your see it in your
Clearly.
face.
Yeah.
But you slowed yourself down a couple times. You can even see in the video, like, you did take a deep breath. You did.
Yeah.
And you were like, you know what? Like, I'm a competitor. I just got to dig deep. I'm not worried about this skinny girl that's ahead of me right now. I'm going to figure this out.
Yeah.
And you hung in there long enough until something came along that was, like, more in your wheelhouse.
Right.
And then you were able to gain an advantage. And I think what you said about your body, I think, is a beautiful thing too, because a lot of times, you know, my weaknesses over the years have ended up being strengths. They've ended up being things that have really led to a lot of success. You know, in school, I was labeled as being slow. Well, one of the things I share with people all the time is being slow and being patient has led to a lot of great things. Even just the development of the slingshot. It took about 3 years for me to really push forward with the idea. It took 4 years to get the patent. It took 2 or 3 years to get it on bodybuilding.com. I mean, all these things, they took a long time, but if I didn't have that background of things always kind of working out very slowly for me, I
Right.
probably wouldn't have had the patience. And so you being in what you said, kind of your worst condition
Yeah.
as an athlete, ended up being a strength in some sense, because look at how many people it reached, and look at how
Yeah.
many people, and now people can see you now too, and there's probably a difference of 20 pounds or so.
Yeah. Yeah.
So now people can see you now and say, look, yeah, okay, first of all, it's okay to go up and down.
Yeah.
And first of all, and secondly, it's okay to be just up. It's okay to be, like, a little bit heavy. Like, we can still make these changes. We could still make these choices. And there's no better time than to step foot in the gym than now. You don't need to. We hear it all the time here at Super Training, like, oh, I want to be stronger. Like, you guys and girls in there are pretty big and strong. Let me get in shape first before I come through the door. It's like, no,
Yeah.
please come through the
Come
door
now.
now.
Yeah.
Like, let's have you start going now, because we just want you to take that first step with us.
Agreed. I think that's it. Honestly, it taught me a lot about myself being in that competition, and then afterwards, like, viewing it, of course, like, I'm my worst critic, and then receiving that much love and support, and then also seeing how many women it impacted. It was like, I've never had a large female following, and honestly, from the show, my female following grew, and that was, like, something that I was really appreciative of.
That's really cool. And then the amount of just young women, right? Like, amount of,
Right.
like, girls that watch.
Little girls that are like, now I'm receiving videos of, like, their little girls in the backyard, like, wrapping ropes around stones and stuff, like, that they got dad to do so that they can be, like, charity. And, like, to me, that I'm just like, oh my gosh, like, I'm not only impacting, like, people who are afraid to go to the gym, but I'm impacting a whole new generation that is going to view fitness and health and strength, like, in a completely different manner than they ever did before.
I was showing my niece last night. I was showing Charity do 210-pound stone lifts and stuff like that, stone loading. And her jaw was just, like, hitting the table. She was like, oh my God. She's like, how much weight is that? And I was like, to put it in perspective, like, that's very difficult for a guy who's strong, who hasn't really picked up stones before. That's very difficult. And a lot of guys forget about being able to even do it even once. And you were just manhandling. You did like 8. My dad was like, "Hey, is this on repeat?" She's like, "No, I did that 8 times."
Just the perfect boomerang on Instagram.
Yeah, but like clockwork, she was picking it up with the same exact form every single time. It was
you get into a rhythm.
Those barbell Turkish get-ups, I think, are just insane.
That's like my thing. Like, I don't know. Like, I saw Brooke Ence do it for the first time like years ago, and I was like, I want to try that. And I started with a women's like weightlifting bar, and then I was just like, you know what? Like, I'm gonna try to see how much weight I can do, and now I can do about 115 with it, and do like a couple of them, and it's just like, I love it. Like, that's my thing. Like, I love the stability. Like, it's a lot of like grip strength and core strength.
Jeez.
there's a lot of mobility in there too.
Oh yeah,
The ability to have the flexion through your hips to move forward like that. You know, I've actually seen Matt Vincent before do this with a person. You ever seen that before?
I have not. No.
Yeah, Matt Vincent. I mean, Matt is just, he's a freak athlete himself, but yeah, I've seen him do that before with, a girl that just probably didn't weigh a lot, but he was still able to do it. I was like, holy shit.
Yeah.
He laid on the ground and like they figured out a way to like kind of hook around, and then he picked her up like that. I was like, oh my God.
That's where that functionality comes in, like just being able to move outside, just the barbell. I think like it to me is so important, just being able to use your body and function and mobilize, like stability, all of it's so important.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. Like what I find super impressive about that Turkish getup, like for me with my back the way it is, just getting up off the floor is kind of a chore. But to see you do it with weight and with ease too, like you're right, that functionality and functional strength.
Yeah.
That's something that I think powerlifters really overlook at times, or bodybuilders. They just want to get jacked.
Where should someone start with like a movement like that? Like if you wanted to, like if someone watches that and they're like, hey, I'd love to try that. Is there some sort of progression you can work towards, or how would you start something like that?
So, especially with like my own athletes that want to get into like more functional training, I always start them out with a bar, like just a dumbbell. And it's like, okay, if you could master doing this with a dumbbell, like just enough weight, and like sometimes it's only 10 pounds, but just getting into the rhythm and like learning, because a lot of people don't understand like the mechanisms, like, the whole like step-by-step process it is in this Turkish getup. And, it's like, it's a step-by-step process, and they have to like think about it. And once they get into a rhythm, then we can go up in weight, and then we can progress to kettlebells. And then from kettlebells, like we can go into a barbell, but it's a slow progression, and you have to have a lot of grip strength and a lot of stability. Yeah.
It probably takes a lot of time to be able to build on something like that.
Yeah.
Now you're a strong, powerful girl, but like, I mentioned there's probably some negative from being on a show like that, like just maybe there's some weirdos creeping on you and stuff like that. And then additionally, you being in such a big city like Atlanta, like being a strong girl, do you feel strong, or do you sometimes feel like that you get in these kind of compromised positions sometimes?
Well, I think every woman, no matter how tough our exterior is, like we're always going to have the situations where we're just like, we feel vulnerable. And that show actually has put me in a couple situations where I've had to think about my safety more, and even like how I leave my hotel room, and just certain things like being aware of my surroundings when I get out of the vehicle. And there's just a couple instances, even at the LA Fit Expo, where I'm out walking the streets and someone's like, wait, I know you from somewhere. And I'm just like, oh my gosh, like, where do you know me from? But it was like a weirdo, like not just like a normal person watching TV with their family, but it was like, this guy was like, a few screws loose, and then like wouldn't stop following me. And like, well, what hotel are you at? Blah, blah, blah. And I'm just man. You don't need to know that, like a period. But it just has made me hyper aware of like my privacy, and to the point where like I won't tag a location while I'm there. I'll wait till I leave. And it's just like just being more aware, and like especially as a female living alone in Atlanta, like thank God I have my dog, but there have been a couple of situations where like, because I'm in a high rise, like I have to take the elevator. And if I didn't have my dog with me, like there would be a couple instances where I feel completely like exposed and vulnerable.
Is your dog like a service dog, like because of your heart? or is it
Well,
a separate thing?
I
or-
actually got her service dog certified when I moved to Atlanta because I wanted to be able to take her everywhere with me because like I felt unsafe walking to the grocery store sometimes, and I wanted to have her with me because like she's so smart. Like she's a hunting dog, right? So like she's a working dog and she wants to be there with me, and you know, she's off leash trained, like super smart anyways. Like she's probably one of the easiest dogs I've had to train. And so getting her service dog certified was like easy peasy. And just having her there with me and like being able to go to the grocery store with her, being able to like just take her everywhere with me. I mean, she's so good and she reads people so well. So it's like, if she doesn't like you, I don't need to like you.
I'm curious, Charity, like when I talk to a lot of women that like start lifting or they're very new to it, I hear a lot of crazy stories that I wouldn't expect of people just being super negative towards like that whole lifestyle. When you started getting into like lifting and getting stronger and getting bigger, did you have any of that type of pushback in your own life?
I did a little bit when I was still in the college gym, which is why I left my college gym and I found the gym that I actually discovered powerlifting in. So, I mean, it was all like a catalyst, but, I started trying to get into lifting weights and I like researched everything on like bodybuilding.com and Google and guys were really condescending towards me. Like, you're a girl, like, what are you doing in here? Like, you're dumb, like, you don't know anything, and like super negative towards me. And what's so satisfactory now is that those same guys would be like, hey, I had class with you. Oh, I went to school with you. It's so great to see how, you know, much you've progressed, blah, blah. And I'm like, sit down. Like, I'm like, please. Like, you know, like you didn't even amount to half of what I did because you were in the gym bad mouthing the little girl that was trying to lift weights. And I think that's the message that like I want to be able to show other women. It's just like, don't let that skinny guy tell you like, oh, you can't be doing this because that's a representation of his insecurity. You know, like guys that are confident and want to help women and that want to like help coach you, because I did have those guys that helped coach me and help get me into powerlifting, you know, and they're the reasons I am here today. And the difference between a man and a boy that's insecure is huge.
Yeah, they're going to be intimidated, and then plus, I think, you know, luckily we're heading towards a better place where people are more accepting of you know, females being a little thicker and females having strength. Like men are just getting over it, right?
Right.
And
right.
I mean, a lot of times you see it a lot on like Brooke Ence's thing, or sometimes on somebody like yourself where. You do a heavy stone load or you do something and a vein pops out of your neck, so you're lifting something crazy, and you know all the comments are you look like a dude, and you're just like, what? And not all the comments obviously, but it's like, where
that one?
It's like, where in the hell is this coming from? I think it's attractive. I think it's amazing when male or female, when somebody has a skill that they like that they enjoy, that they push to the limits. I think that's awesome. Like, I think that's a cool trait. I don't think there's anything there's nothing negative I can think of from it. And when I see the kind of the old school bodybuilding women, it's like not necessarily my cup of tea. It's not like that I think that that's super hot or anything, but I do think it's awesome.
It's respectable,
and
right?
Absolutely. And it's definitely an attractive trait to hone in on something and to, you know, work towards getting what you want. I think that's awesome.
I think just being dedicated and goal-driven in general is an attractive trait. And, you know, if you admire someone for their wit and, you know, and their part in society and science and literature, but you can't admire the same tenacity that it takes to lift or to hone a skill that's physical, then it's like, oh, that's a little, you know, biased. You know, that's a little like you're being hypocritical. You know, and like, especially as a woman, like I'm not going to be interested in someone who's not showing the same level of dedication that I am, you know? So it's like, I look for the same traits in other people because it's like, okay, if you're driven and you're dedicated and you're, you know, goal orientated, then we're going to get along.
Do you have a minimum requirement for
How did I know this was going
for this future husband? Does he have to, you know, bench 405 or be able to, like, you know, log press double your log press or something
log
like that?
press me, no. You
Couple
know,
guys were like, sign me up.
Yeah, I have gotten some carry requests, but no, honestly, like I used to.
You get probably people sliding in the DM want to wrestle.
Yeah. You want to wrestle?
You're like,
Yeah.
not necessarily. Not necessarily.
Yeah, or they ask me to carry them, and that's always really uncomfortable for me. And it's like, oh, I weigh this. Could you carry me? And I'm like, in what scenario would I be wanting to carry you? But
I mean, probably somebody that you would be interested in would probably likely be interested in some form of fitness, but you
Right.
probably don't really care if they lift weights or whatever, right?
well, I mean, yeah, they have to lift weights, but it's just, I think it's the mindset, right? I'm not really concerned about the number, but it's like, the person underneath, because like, this is something I do. This isn't
But
who
if they
I am.
can't bench 185, I mean, that's not great.
That's a little, yeah.
Yeah, we're starting to run into some. We're starting to run into some
yeah,
problems,
like,
right?
I mean, I feel as strong and dedicated as I am, it's like, okay, they have to show some level of effort.
Right.
But ultimately, it's just, like this is something I do. This isn't who I am, and I can't expect somebody else to like impress me with their numbers, because like I know some of the strongest people in the world, right? So it's like it's hard at this point to be like, oh, impress me with your total, impress me with your numbers. It's like that's so superficial. It's like, okay, well, what kind of personal traits are you bringing to the table? Like, who are you underneath all of that?
Do you worry a lot about like body image, or are you more performance based, where you're like just training for strength, and are you pretty comfortable with like the body that you have now?
I'd say I'm probably the most comfortable now than I've ever been. And it's not even because I think that I look better now than I ever have before. I've definitely been more leaner, like when I'm powerlifting or as a swimmer and stuff like that. But I think confidence-wise, like I know who I am and I know what I want in life. And I think that brings a level of security and comfortable in your own skin, like type of trait and like personality. So, regardless of like what my body looks like for what I'm doing at that time, like I'm going to be comfortable.
How do you manage social media in terms of, you kind of have a message of like, one moment you might be lifting a stone, and the next moment there might be a picture that is like more revealing. Like how for you, like, where do you draw that line, and like, what are you comfortable with, and like what feels right to you?
Well, there's definitely a fine line like between like lifting and then soft porn, right? And I think for me, like I always think about my audience. Like I am very aware of who my followers are and the audience that I'm targeting. And I think for me, it's just being able to connect the dots between femininity and being strong, and showing that, yeah, there are so many different sides to being a woman. Like, being feminine is strong. And they're not separate. They're not two different sides of me. No, they're all connected. They're all the same. And like the girl that's wearing a dress is still just as strong as the person who's just wearing, t-shirt and shorts lifting a stone,
Right. That makes a lot of sense, I think. What are some things that you kind of have learned, from social media, because of, you get a lot of the positive, and you hear how you've changed some people's lives, and then you also get some of the negative.
I've been very fortunate that like my negative is probably like a 1%. And, and I think I'm actually one of the few females that can say that. Like, I really don't receive too many negative comments or messages or anything like
That's
that.
really good to hear, because that also means that you are looking at the positive.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So-
Yes. Yeah. Like I don't really notice that. And it's not something I ever respond to either. Like I don't, because that's what they want, right? Like a troll is on the internet to get some type of response from me. And if I've learned anything in my life, it's like not to let the trolls like get any kind of rise or reaction from me. Like I'm above that. So I just, it is what it is. They're probably very miserable with their lives, and I'll just leave them be.
Athletically right now, I mean, do you have anything that you're preparing for, or anything that you're going to be doing?
Rehabbing my hamstring.
Other than rehabbing your hamstring, were you like getting ready for anything?
So I've got this personal vendetta where I want to go out back to Sedona and mountain bike. And this is something that I've been doing every year. And I go around my birthday, which is like in May. So I go between like end of April, beginning of May. And I like to hike the Grand Canyon. I like to mountain bike. And that's like the life outside of the gym. So
I remember seeing pictures from that. You did that like last year sometime?
Yeah. So I did it around Cinco de Mayo last year, and we did 24 miles in the Grand Canyon
Holy
one day.
shit.
In one day. And then
You're an animal.
we mountain biked.
That's awesome.
Yeah,
That's
we
a lot.
mountain biked 21 the following day in Sedona. And it was so great to have a friend there with me that was into the same things that I was doing. And she was just as athletic as I was. So like being able to like have that like female companion and like go out there, and it's just like us living life, like detached from our phones, everything. We posted things like when we got home, but it was just like being out there and enjoying life outside of the gym, but being able to put in use what we did in the gym. I think that's what's great.
Yeah. Do you need to kind of decompress from social media a little bit here and there?
Yeah. So I think everybody needs to I think it's good for everyone to detach a little bit and just realize it is what it is and it's there for what it is, but it's not real life, right? Those comments, those likes, it's not reality. And to be able to disengage and take a step back and be like, I get to live my life and not be concerned about what's going on this social site is really, I think, healthy.
Yeah, I love yesterday when we hung out. Like we had our phones, but like no one was using them.
Right.
We hung out for a few hours and had you over at my house and got to hang out with my family, and we were shooting the breeze with Matt Vincent, and that's something that I do often. When I invite people to the area, is like we go to my house, we enjoy some food, maybe have some wine, maybe have some cookies, maybe a couple cookies got eaten. I don't really remember what happened.
No.
But just enjoy some good times and just flat out just enjoy each other.
Yeah.
And there's really, I can't even think of an instance except for maybe, last year, I think we just ended up having, it was like an extravaganza of of a who's who on social media. So we took one photo, a kind of a group picture. But other than that, out of the years that I've been doing this, it's really, really rare for someone to, and I wouldn't care if someone wanted to take a picture, of course, but it's kind of nice.
Yeah.
That's not part of the focus.
That
We're
wasn't even like a forefront on your mind.
Yeah, we're just hanging out. We're just talking, period.
Good
So that's
conversation.
Yeah, it's a lot more enjoyable that way sometimes.
Yes.
What you got over there, Andrew?
Just thinking about what about the girl that wants to get strong? Maybe she either has a dad or uncle or even a significant other that's like that's whack. Like, why don't you want to look like a girl? Like, don't you want to be feminine? What can you tell that girl that wants to be strong? She wants to be like Charity Witt, but she has no support right now.
I think for the female that doesn't have any support to get strong, because there's that stigma of like, oh, you're going to look like a man or you're going to be unattractive. You're not doing it for anybody else but yourself. And I think that's the beauty of it. Who cares what people think of you or what their opinion, their opinion does not dictate who you are or your value. So being able to stand up for yourself and be like, no, this is what I want for myself. You're adding that value to yourself. And when you allow somebody else to dictate that, you're giving them control over you. And, it's taking that control back and being like, no, I dictate who I am. I dictate my value and who I want to be. And if that's someone who just wants to do endurance training, then great. And if that's someone who sees strong as a powerlifter or as a strongwoman or somebody in strength sports, then that's beautiful too. But it's don't let other people dictate how you value yourself or how you see yourself.
Mm-hmm. And what do you think are some healthy resources to find maybe even some just a little bit of inspiration, a little bump to really get going?
For me, honestly, I never got inspiration from other people because, every situation is different for each person. And being such a loner growing up, being on my own so much, I learned to rely on myself. And honestly, even looking at other people, no one's going to be able to tell you how to go about doing something, and no one's going to tell you what the right way is. You have to figure that out yourself. So the best resources, honestly, is just to be able to share your experience. Being able to start that conversation, start that, that dictation between other women and be like, okay, well, what are you doing and how do you feel? And just be able to start the conversation. And, and then you can go from there and decide for yourself how you want to go about reaching your goals.
Okay. And then what's a really clean, clear-cut way to not go about finding inspiration?
Comparing yourself to everybody on social media, because you're looking at someone's highlight reel. And we say this all the time because, clearly I am not going to find the worst picture of myself and post it for 170 people on Instagram.
I might do that to you.
I mean, I've had other people tag me and things, and I'm like, can you not? Like, oh my gosh. But it's like, everybody wants to like show the best version of themselves. Like, we're all very, very much like, okay, this is me. Then you get like the odd time where you're real. Like, nope, this is who I am 90% of the time. And I think that's what's great. But it's so dangerous to just go on your popular feed and scroll and scroll and scroll and be like, oh my God, but I'll never be like her, or I'll never have that relationship, or I'll never have that job or that money or that figure. And it's like, it's so toxic. And it's like, no, look at your life and then compare you now to who you used to be. And when you see that progression, and it's so inspiring, like, be inspired by yourself and your own progress.
What's the thing that like really drives you right now in terms of like working out and working with clients, all of that type of stuff? What's the thing that really pushes you in that direction?
I think it's like it's a multitude of things, and it's the girl that says that like I inspired her to go out and go to the gym when she was terrified to do that. It's the girl that writes me a message saying that she just got out of an abusive marriage and she's now looking to take care of herself. It's the client that's never liked going to the gym and now I train his whole family. It's, the professional athlete that's had 7 knee surgeries and now I'm training him and all of his professional athletic friends, and it's like, it's just creating like this ricochet and this movement that it's like, being functional and being healthy is a mindset just as much as it is being in the gym. And when you unite those two, that's when you feel whole as a person.
I really like what you said earlier about, not always looking to others for answers. That is a place, where you can get answers. You can ask other people for advice and things like that. But I think an important thing to always understand is that nobody has better advice and better interest in themselves than yourself, and
right.
Everything that you need is already in there somewhere. And it might take some searching, and you might need a little pep talk from somebody. You might need a friend or a parent or a loved one to kind of give you that little boost, but you don't always have that. Mm-hmm. And all the faculties that Dwayne Johnson has. Everyone else has all those things in there somewhere as well. He has just developed them to a level which is, hard to catch up with. But it also takes a really long time.
It does.
And you got to eat a lot of shit for a really long time. Mm-hmm. I call it eating a shit sandwich without the bread.
Yeah.
You got to eat a lot of shit sandwiches before you get to be somebody like him. He's got $7 Productions because he had $7 in his pocket when he left the Canadian Football League and didn't know what he was going to do. He was depressed. He was sad. He was upset. He was going to be a pro football player, and it didn't work. He failed, right? Then he was like, tried his hand at wrestling and ended up becoming an amazing wrestler and refocused and worked on something else. But these stories are they're all the same, right? It's all the same. Yeah. It's the same stuff over and over again. People work really hard, and it's easy to get excited about something. It's easy for any one of us at this table can be successful in anything that we go and try to do. All 3 of us could decide that we're going to start trying to build websites. Mm-hmm. And over the next month, we can learn a lot. And, the websites that we build would all probably look like shit. And one of us might be able to excel at it more than the next. But the one that's going to get ahead is going to be the one that sticks with it.
Right.
The one that does not stop the job until it's done. You don't stop until you get what you want. And so everything you need is already kind of within. It's already it's sitting there. And you just have to figure out ways of activating it. And people like yourself that get the opportunity to get on TV, that's amazing, because then now it's reaching a whole new audience. Mm-hmm. And the Titan Games is kind of a great viewing of that, because it is tapping more into what we love, which is fitness.
Right. And I think it's just even the saying, like the mantra that I adapted on the Titan Games, that now like Dwayne has like told me to patent, but like no quitting Witt. And I think that applies to everybody. And it's just like, it's something that I said, and I was like, I don't quit when I'm tired, I quit when I'm done. And they were like, so you'd say there's no quitting Witt? I'm like, there's no quitting Witt. And it was something that my dad actually used to tell me all the time. And, he and I have had like a rocky relationship, but, we've come together again and we have a relationship now. And when I was doing this show, and it was just like, that's what it is. It's the consistency of like constantly striving for that end goal and not being concerned about your competition, what's around you, who's watching, who's taking videos and pictures, but you're just focused on getting to that goal and not quitting in the process.
Well, and because you have no quit, I had to force you to quit yesterday. Me and Matt Vincent, we had to actually like stop you from lifting because you were, you're like, I really want the 500-pound deadlift.
And I'm like, this is the whole reason I came here. But not the whole reason, but like a major part is just like, I wanted it on a platform. And it's like, of course, like pulling in the gym a few times, it's like, okay, yeah, I know I can do it. And that's what was so frustrating about it. Cause it's like, I've done this before. Like, it's not even like this number scares me. And, I think that's what was like so frustrating. And like, as a competitor, you have to learn that it seems like quitting, but it's not, it's just stopping and realizing that this is not going to benefit me in the long term. So I need to stop. And then in that case, it's like, it's not quitting. It's literally just like, you know what? I'm putting this to rest right now because it's going to negatively hurt me.
It's just a better decision. Like, what I was thinking of is like, you got a long flight home. You got a lot of things that you have your mind on in addition to, being able to lift heavy weight. And it's like, yeah, of course, the crowd, everyone would love to see you hit 500 pounds. It would be a social media extravaganza. You'd pick up a few extra thousand followers and it would go down in the history books, right? And it would be really cool. But at the same time, it's like, I don't know, like what if you jack yourself up and you're hurt for 3 months? Or what if it's like you end up with like a bulged disc from it or something?
Or a complete tear where I need reattachment surgery. Yeah, can we not show the video?
So what happened on your first attempt here?
Well, warm-ups were great. Like, great. And that's
always a horrible sign.
I know, right?
Yeah.
And that was what was so crazy because like I was in the warm-up platform and I had just pulled 455 and it flew up. And everybody was like, oh shit. Like you're gonna pull some big weight out there. They're like, that flew up like 315. I was like, this felt great. Like I was so ready. And then I went out there and like I wasn't even concerned with the number. Like I was like, oh, I've tripled this before. Like I'm fine. But right when I got to about my knee, like I felt my body shutting down. I was like, what is going on right now? And then I felt it pop and my whole body just started shaking. And like it was terrible. Like the pain and your body goes into shock. And then I sat down. I was like, well, I'll just sit down. And then I couldn't get back up. Like my body just wasn't going to let me go back up. And then I was like, right about here, I was like, what's going on? And I was like, nope. Yep. I was like, walking off.
You're like, ooh, what was that? Something popped or something, huh?
Yeah. I go behind that curtain, I sit down, and I didn't get back up. Like, I was like, I can't move anymore. And then I was like, well, maybe my body's just going into shock. Like, maybe something weird's going on, blah, blah, blah. And that's like, you've been complaining all morning about your hip and your hamstring. Like, maybe your adrenaline just kicked in and you didn't feel it, but obviously something was already going on. And then, like, when I tried to get up and I couldn't move my entire left leg, I was like, okay. Like, I'm trying, like, to not be upset, like, because I was so upset. And I'm sure you saw it on my face, but, like, I was so upset. And it was just like...
Yeah, you were kind of in tears when I was talking to you.
Yeah, like, because you feel like a failure. And I think a lot of people can relate to this. It's just like, you're doing something that you can do. And it's not even like, and I was so angry because it's like, that number doesn't even scare me. And it was just like, and I just got hurt. And it was like, how could I get hurt doing something that's like not even supposed to be hard for me? And I was just so frustrated and so hurt. And then like mentally and like, physically. And then it was just like, big scheme, big picture. Like, I know that I can do that number. That's not the issue. The issue is that I'm offended by myself right now. I'm offended with my performance, and I'm offended that my body just was dehydrated. And obviously, like, old injury flared up again, and my hamstring was just like, no, we're not gonna completely tear. Like, we just don't want to do that.
And you might have been dehydrated from that magnesium citrate. So Charity is
All right, let's just bring that up.
Charity
Yeah.
is quite the gambler.
Yeah, that's what
her-
I was going to ask
That's
about.
like her new nickname
Yeah.
was the Gambler because she was really rolling the dice. She took the magnesium citrate, I think, right before you went on your flight, right?
Before
Oof.
and on the flight, yes.
So, like, you can time this out to be better than that, but
I mean, there are ways.
it does take
I-
a few hours to hit you sometimes, but you don't always really know. And so, magnesium citrate will just basically help you go to the bathroom, or as she put it, pee out your butt repeatedly, kind of out of control.
Repeatedly and out of control at any moment. But yeah, the guy next to me really hated sitting next to me because I was up on that plane, like up and down. And I even warned him. I was like, look, I'm cutting for a competition. I've taken...
Hey,
This was a
I
really
just want
awkward conversation.
I just want to
but-
know, I might shit myself, you know, so
literally,
you have to be
literally,
okay
I was
with
like,
that.
look, I might have to sit on the aisle seat just so you're not constantly getting up. And he was like, kind of like at like no, I'm sitting here. Like, I want this seat. And I was like, all right, you're gonna have to get up quite a few times. And I made him get up like a few times on this flight.
His mistake.
And I was just like, hey, you're the one who wanted to sit there. But but yeah, definitely a gambo. And it took like over 24 hours to get out of my system.
See, that's the biggest problem with that kind of stuff. Any sort of
Yeah.
diuretic or any sort of water manipulation you do for competition, you want to do the least amount of suffering so that you can get that weight back on and all that
Yeah.
stuff. And sometimes you can kind of mistime it, and then you're still using the bathroom after
Yeah.
you start eating after you start eating foods that are kind of nutritious that you want to like stick to you. They're not sticking to you. They're not staying in your system. So you can
Yeah.
get dehydrated very easily.
Yeah.
You gonna try that for jiu-jitsu?
Definitely not. I'm never gonna cut weight.
It might be a good like offensive/defensive move
Yeah.
though.
Just mount them on their face and just like
Yeah.
street.
Little north-south position.
Yeah.
Whap.
There's
Yeah,
enough
they will.
balls and face in that sport. You don't really need any of that. Yeah, no, like seriously.
There's enough of that going on as it
Yeah.
is. Yeah.
You know,
Or not enough.
I'm curious because like, so I went to Worlds this past year and I lost in the most just sad fashion, right? I learned a lot from it and I think it was necessary. Do you have like anything, it could be athletically, it could be like life, just like anything that like just sucked. It was an absolute failure, but you took this weekend,
Hanging out
like
with
you took a lot away from it. Yeah.
You just mean like in general, like in life?
Yeah,
Or-
that like you took something away from it that just changed your, I don't know, your outlook on specific things you do or, you know, where you're headed.
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't athletically. It was like, I think a few life situations where I was at rock bottom, and it was just like, I mean, one of them was not having my own place to live while I was in Canada and sleeping on a couch in the kitchen, and another one was hiding out in the closet when I was married in a bad relationship and locking myself in the closet because that's where it was safe. And another one was living paycheck to paycheck, coming out of that divorce, not knowing if like I'd have money to buy groceries because I had to buy dog food. And those are defining moments where you're just like, okay, like I've been through worse. I can get through this too. And you learn to just count on yourself that it's like, regardless of any situation that I am, physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, whatever it is, like I'm going to pull myself out of this. And you learn to be comfortable with disparity, and you learn to be comfortable with just absolute hopelessness, because it's like, you know what? No, like I've been in the dark before and I always find the light again.
How does somebody, I mean, I know it must be extremely complicated. How does somebody get out of an abusive relationship?
For me, I just didn't go home one day. And, you know, and like, and that wasn't the only one. It was just like, it was a recurring thing in my life. And honestly, it showed me that it's like, okay, why do I keep ending up in these situations? You know, like, what is it about me?
You've been in more than one relationship that was that way?
Yeah. And I think that was like the wake up call for me. And it was just like, finally, it was like, no.
Was that like anything you saw as a kid or anything like that? Or just,
No, like, you know, like my parents fought, but, you know, like my dad would never lay a hand on my mom. You know, it was just, I didn't know my own value or my own worth. And me being such a strong, independent person, I challenge someone who's not strong and independent, right? And I found myself constantly in relationships where they were trying to control me. And I can't be controlled. And so what happens, with a weaker individual, they don't know how to show their strength except to beat somebody down. And like in high school, being in like
I just can't imagine. Like I cannot imagine a scenario of feeling that way. Of being abused like that. I also can't even fathom hitting a female. I can't fathom like child abuse or anything like that. So if I watch TV and that comes on, it would be great to like learn more about it, but I can't watch it. I'm like, this is just too. It's too. I have my own kids and stuff like that, and it's just too much for me to even handle. So the fact that you're able to pull yourself through some of that is awesome, because now you're on the other side of it and you can speak to people and you probably help thousands and thousands of people. I think it's awesome that you're able to have the strength to pull yourself out of it. How were you able to kind of pull through some of that?
You learn to just say no. And as easy and as simple as that is, it's the hardest thing in the world, because you get to the point where you accept that that's just your life, and, the biggest criticism I hear from, the ignorant public is that, oh, well, she waited too long to come out about it, so it must be made up. Like, as someone who has been through rape, as someone who has been through physical abuse, you don't feel comfortable or confident coming out with that, because you hold so much shame that happened to me. And it infuriates me when people are like, oh, well, she waited too long to come out. And I was like, you have no idea the mental battle and fortitude that she had to muster to even come out at all. And it takes so much time, and eventually you just have to say enough is enough.
Does it even register exactly what has happened? Or do you kind of like justify it?
It takes time. And honestly, like it was just, I acted on instinct. And it was just like, I had my dogs with me, and it was just like, I'm not going home. And it was a coworker, and she was looking at me, and I guess like I looked petrified. And she was like, I'm not going to let you go home, judging by your body language right now. And I grabbed some overnight stuff, called my parents. I was like, and that was like the biggest like ego, like swallowing moment. It's like, I'm coming home. And it was the best thing for me. Like doing that, it was just like a breath of fresh air that I was like, oh my God, like I'm out. Like I don't have to go back to that. And it was regaining that ground and regaining my life back, that it's like, oh my gosh, like I do have control over my life. Like I don't have to accept that as my reality. And I think that was the biggest lesson, of just knowing that you have control over your life. You're giving them control by not doing anything, by not saying anything. And it's like, and it's not always safe to stand up to them, but you can always walk away. And I think it's just knowing that you can. And regardless if you think you don't have anywhere to go, there are countless outlets that you can look up. There are countless people who will be willing to help you. And it's just learning to swallow that shame and swallow that ego and be like, you know what, for my betterment, for my longevity, I need to step out.
Did you have any like friends or other friends other than this woman that you just mentioned that like ever did try to do this for you, or like maybe, I know, encourage you to leave, but maybe at the time you just weren't ready?
I was very private. So actually nobody knew about anything going on. And even this friend, like, she didn't know anything that was going on. I never spoke about it, never told anybody. Even through like our whole separation process, I never mentioned it. And
you never told your parents?
No, never said anything to them. Like, they had speculations, but I think the best part was that they never pressured me either. Like, they were like, you'll tell us when you're ready. And when I finally like felt comfortable to talk about things, to be able, like, strong enough to even talk about things, it was just like, no, all of this happened. And even now, like, I'll start to remember things that like I had pushed back so far in my memory that like I forgot even happened. And I'm like, oh my gosh, like I endured that. And, you know, it's crazy, like to realize that it's like almost like an out of body experience, because you go into like that type of traumatic event, like most of the time they're not going to talk about it. Most of the time they're not going to share that, and they're just going to internalize it. And you have to learn to study body language and study how they act around men and how they act around like other female companions. Like if they're a little bit like, oh, well, maybe she'll look too deep inside me. Like then it's like, okay, there's something going on with her. And I think I've become hypersensitive to other women, and I can pinpoint as soon as she walks in the room. And it's really helped me. Like, I mean, I've had neighbors I've had to call the cops on because I knew something was going on. Wow. And I had to wait till I heard something to be able to call the cops. And it was just like, because I knew it, like just seeing her every day, I was like, something's going on. And it's like, it makes you hyper aware. And I'm so thankful for that. Like, I'm so thankful that I have the ability now to reach out to those women and reach them on a level that they understand because I've been there.
Have you had to get help for it?
Yeah. Like it's taken years for me to be able to be comfortable to talk about it and to even repair my relationship with men. So like when I first came out of that, like I was super bitter, like super like I came across as like super tough, like the ice queen, you know, like don't get close to Charity, like she'll rip your heart out. Like, you know, like, you know, and nobody knew what had actually happened. You know, they just thought that I was just super like abrasive, and they didn't understand that I was just protecting myself because I was so tender and broken on the inside. And it took a lot of consoling actually from my physical therapist that I was studying under, and he mentored me, and he used to do like Reiki and stuff like that, and he just like every day would just pour love and light into me. And then, you know, repairing my relationship with my dad and my mom, that helped a ton. It was like, honestly, it wasn't me going to therapy, but it was therapy. And it was just learning to communicate and have relationships again that were healthy relationships.
Yeah. To somebody who hasn't had these experiences, they hear about someone in an abusive relationship, and they're just like, why do you keep going home? Like, just leave. How were you able to find strength to, you know, like you said, just not go home? Like, I'm sure you had your dogs with you, which was great, but I'm sure there was something at home that you were attached to that you were kind of afraid that you might not ever see again, or you know, just because like you hear people say like, oh, I've put too much time into this relationship to leave now, or I've done this or I've done that, I've invested this and that. Basically, how did you find the strength to just not go home?
I think it was just, honestly, it was an impulsive decision on my part. I wish I had a better explanation. Mm-hmm. Or like an escape route for someone. But
maybe some thought was developed in your head of like, this is not working for me anymore. I cannot live this way anymore.
I think that's all it was. It was just like, I cannot go the rest of my life living like this, and I'm either going to commit suicide or I'm just not going to be myself anymore. And it was like, I either lose myself to this world or I lose myself completely. And that thought scared me more than the uncertainty in my future. And it was just like, you know, I would rather jump off this cliff right now than lose myself completely.
Do you have any advice for like, because there are probably a lot of like people that are friends and they know like maybe they're like their cousin or I don't know, one of their friends is getting abused and they don't necessarily know what to do because they can't just, I mean, do you think that they should just continuously talk to that individual or just be there for that individual, or what do you think they should do?
Being there and being consistent. So it's like the friends that were there for me and that were just consistent, they were just stable. We're still friends, you know. They never imposed. They never forced my hand. They never made me feel like I didn't have an option. And they were the ones that were there for me when I was moving, when I needed, you know, friends. And like one of my girlfriends, like she was there at my new place like every night to make sure I was okay. And, you know, and it wasn't like she gave me an option. It was like, hey, I'm coming by. It was like, great, you know, and she invaded my space. And I needed that because, like, I'm so introverted anyways. And, like, she forced me to open up myself and just learn to like live again and to be comfortable living in that space. And honestly, like having her there for me through that, like that time of just adjusting was huge. And it's like, sometimes like they're not going to want you to be there for them, and you just kind of have to be there for them and just be like, no, I'm here, and we don't have to talk about anything, but I'm just going to be there, and we're going to eat, or I'm going to clean your house. Like I'd have friends come over and they'd clean my house for me. And it was just like, what are you doing? And they're like, oh, just, sit down, whatever. And like, they didn't give me an option. They were just there for me. And like having those types of friends, like it was just priceless. It was priceless.
Yeah, that's what I usually recommend for people is to, just if you are a friend and you see something like that going on, somebody's abusing drugs, or they're being abused themselves, or all you can really do, and the drug abuse thing is a way different animal, but all you can do is just really tell someone like, I'm here for you. Like whenever you're ready, because when you kind of lend yourself out to somebody, yeah, I guess even in your situation, it would be the same thing. If I keep telling you like, I'm here for you, I'm ready to help you if you don't want the help, then I can't really do much for you. But whenever you're ready, and I think that's the key, is just to tell somebody, look, I'm here for you. I got your back. However I can help. If I need to come over and do your dishes, if I need to mow your lawn or walk your dog, or like if I need to do something, I'll do it. But then again, not putting too much pressure on the person to maybe reveal all of what's going on and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I think just the company is what builds that security for them and that trust, because they don't feel like they have to reveal anything. But at the same time, you get so comfortable with that person and there's that trust established that it starts giving you hope.
What was the worst of it? I mean, you said you like locked yourself in the closet. Like what? That sounds fucking crazy to me. I can't fathom that. I mean, this is a physical abuse, I'm imagining.
Yeah. I mean, it was a lot of things, and of course, like towards the end of it, like I wasn't perfect either, because you become so bitter and traumatized that you start lashing out too, and it just became just one toxic mess. And but yeah, I think when you my jaw still unhinges to this day, I've received my share of hard knocks, but you learn to take a hit, and with him, it wasn't even necessarily the physical was something that it eventually escalated to, but it was verbal and it was emotional, and the physical shocked me, and it was just like I didn't expect that. And that's when I was like, I got to get out, because I've been down this road before and there's no coming back from this. Once you cross that line, there is no hope of return. And it's like, being in
that's something people should understand then, huh?
Yes, absolutely. And it's like, once that line is crossed, you can go to therapy, or you can work through verbal and emotional abuse, because, obviously there's something in that person's life that has made them that way, and they've got demons that they need to work on. And I was so sympathetic, and I was so empathic towards him. And it's like, he's had a hard life, I was so forgiving. And then once that line is crossed, it's like, oh no, I got to get out now, ASAP. And, and signs are like, if that happens, and then the next day they act like it didn't happen. And then it's like, oh, no, you came at me, or you attacked me, and the total denial of it. And I was just like, oh, you're a psycho. Got it. And it was like, and I started processing all of these things. So it's like, it helps, I consider myself smarter than average, but it's like, it helps being like, okay, I've seen this before. I've been down this route before. You're not acknowledging your actions, which means that you weren't yourself in that instant, which means this is going to happen again. And, someone that can't acknowledge that they're doing these things and they're in complete denial, it's a psychological mishap, like where they're really like, they know it's there, but it's like they're not recognizing it in themselves because it's so bad and they don't want to recognize that it's there. And when you're in those types of relationships, you see the other partner, it could be females like this too, and they make excuses for them. Oh, she had too much to drink, or he just had too much to drink, or he just wasn't like himself, and they make excuses for them. And I think understanding that, no, once that line's crossed, it will be crossed again, and you need to get out as soon as possible, because that person doesn't even realize what they're doing because they're not willing to.
People that are irrational, they have a different set of rules. You can't apply rational thought to people that are irrational. It will not work.
Right.
I've had many, there's a lot of abuse and drug abuse and all kinds of stuff kind of throughout my family. And that's something that I had to learn kind of the hard way, is like,
right.
This is the way that things are. And yeah, they might be able to change a little bit. They can make some changes, but for the most part, sometimes these people are just irrational, and there's not really a way to get them back to thinking rationally. They're just,
Yeah.
I don't even know how to put it into words, but for whatever reason, they just react and do things differently than most of us. They have a different way of coping with things that just doesn't add up in the real world, doesn't make any sense, and doesn't make living a fulfilled life possible. It makes it impossible. And so, I learned that with my oldest brother, who he ended up dying of a drug overdose. And I spent so much time and energy always trying to, like, kind of, I guess, make sure he was okay and make sure, like, he wouldn't fly off the handle and these different things. And my wife is the one who told me, she's like, you need to just stop, applying rational thought to someone who's irrational. I was like, just stopped me dead in my tracks. And I was like, holy shit, she's fucking right. Like, I'm wasting my time. This is causing me a lot of heartache. And if I just realize that he's just that way, like that's the way that he is, then I can live with that. And I don't need to try to put him in any sort of box, or he doesn't have to have any rules.
Right.
So maybe for some reason, for somebody, it makes sense to abuse drugs or abuse another person, but it's not going to fit well into somebody else's life. And that's where we run into problems.
Right.
That was amazing that you shared that with us. I really, I know that's got to be really, really hard. What are some things that you learned going through that process? Because I think therapy. It's unfortunate why you had to go to therapy, but I think therapy and even like meditation and some of these things and self-reflection, I think these are powerful things that I think everybody should kind of go through because of what they can kind of reveal. What are some things that you learned that you still utilize today that help you in your day-to-day?
Just honestly, that self-reflection of just being honest with yourself. I learned coming out of it, like being in that type of relationship developed things in me that I wasn't proud of, and characteristics in me that I had to forge in order to defend myself that I didn't need anymore. And I didn't have to be that way anymore. And learning that you don't have to be better, and you don't have to be marked by your past and treat people based on your past experiences is huge. And that was the biggest learning lesson, is regaining that vulnerability and learning that there's strength in vulnerability, and being able to be sensitive and open with people shows a huge amount of strength than being closed off and abrasive and cold. And, that shows that you're truly healed and you're truly strong enough to be able to be that way with someone. And then, it's just that meditation. And I think just being completely honest with yourself that you're not perfect either. And you've got some things to work on.
C.T. Fletcher told me a really amazing story, and he was abused as a kid, all growing up, all the way to the point when he heard his dad's keys, and when his dad would come home and open up the door, that he'd be terrified. He knew he was going to get beat, and he just couldn't do anything right. He couldn't talk right. He couldn't walk right. If he was chewing food a certain way, he'd get hit. I mean, it was a nightmare. He got abused his whole life. And as he got older, he thought, his dad's getting older and his dad's, ill. And he just thought, at some point his dad's going to be like, hey, man, I'm fucking sorry, like I shouldn't have done those things, but I did them because of A, B, and C or whatever, And it's a really complicated story because C.T. Fletcher's dad was put up on a pedestal because he was like a minister or a priest or minister, I believe. And so in the community, he was so loved and people respected him so well. And CT was always kind of confused. It's like, my dad's a fucking asshole. Like, why are you people worshiping this guy? He said, this guy's an animal. And anyway, as years went on, his dad was like, probably, I don't know if his dad's passed yet or what the deal is, but his dad was like in his 80s. And CT, they did like a documentary on him. And so they go and they see his dad, and he's okay with his dad. He's got like a relationship with him, but it's not good. His dad doesn't talk much. And they did this documentary on CT, and they kind of thought like the dad and CT would have like a heart to heart, and the dad would say, hey, you know what? Yeah, you know what, son, I shouldn't have laid a hand on you, and I made a lot of mistakes in my life. His dad never did it. His dad never did it, and CT was like left kind of confused, and I don't know if he saw a therapist or if it was a friend or who it was, but or maybe even I think maybe CT even told me it just came to him one day that he needs to go to his dad and apologize, and that would sever the feelings, because the feelings were from CT. Right. The feelings weren't from the dad. The dad was like immune to it because his dad's fucking crazy, or his dad's irrational, right?
Right.
And so CT's like, oh, well, maybe if I try this, maybe this would work. So CT goes to him and says, I'm sorry, I was never the son that you wanted. And he said, boom, cured like that. He said, just gone. All the animosity, all the stuff he ever felt. He said his dad had no reaction. His dad's just stonewalled. But he already knew that. He knew his dad was going to be like that. And I thought, like, holy shit, man. Like, CT Fletcher telling me that story, I already think CT Fletcher is the greatest, one of the greatest people I've ever met. And right then and there, I was like, wow. I was like, this guy's made of something different than the rest of us. Like, that's an unbelievable story to be able to do that. But it severed that feeling that he had. He just, whatever that weight was that's been on his back all those years, it finally lifted off his back. And it was because of just him kind of thinking a little differently about it, him getting a different perspective into it.
And you have to. Like, it's crazy you say that, because there was a point where just, if anyone's going through divorce, you understand, like, there's a process you have to go through. And there was a point where it's like, I just wanted us so badly just to be able to communicate. And without the animosity and everything else, like the finger pointing and the blaming game. And like, I never got an apology from him. And I was the one who apologized first. And it was just like, I'm sorry I wasn't enough for you. Like, clearly, like, I wasn't enough for you. And from that point forward, like, it's unfortunate that, like, I was so disengaged that, like, there was no chance for us, right? And he had so much repentance from that point. And, like, I actually saw him, like, I'm sorry. Like, I agree. Like, I did this, and this. But there was so much, like, because they are crazy people, there was so much, like, he would do that and then expect me to take him back. And then I think that's something that, like, people should be aware of, too. It's like, they're going to be like, oh, no, I'm sorry. Like, take me back, do this, do that. And then you have to remain strong and be like, no, like, I can't go back to somewhere and be happy where I lost that happiness. Like, that's not going to happen. But, I received so much healing by forgiving him. And it was like, when I no longer had that hatred and that animosity towards him, like, I was able to change as a person and to grow and be who I needed to be and know myself. And had I not forgiven him, I still would probably be bitter and, like, hurtful towards other people. But it was like, it brought me healing.
It's just such an easier way to communicate with people, even in just your day-to-day, and even if you're an employer or an employee, or it's just so much easier to go to somebody and say, hey, man, I'm sorry. I think I might have screwed that up a little bit, even if you don't even feel that way. Yeah. It does a lot for you. And then, we talked last night about that, gaining perspective into, how somebody else feels. I even talked about, like, just trying to set up an appointment. If I text Charity and say, hey, what are you doing on Wednesday at noon? Well, now I just dumped a lot of anxiety on her. She's like, shit, man, Wednesday's, pretty full. I got yoga, I got lifting, I got, right? She got all these things going on, right? And if I just came from a different perspective and said, hey, there's probably no way you can squeeze me in a noon on Wednesday. Well, now from her side of it, she's going to go out of her way to be like, hey, you know what? Actually, I can make time. I can meet you at like 1. And so it solves the problem. And so sometimes just telling somebody you're sorry or gaining perspective into,
Right.
because really all you're looking for is you're trying to gain a result when you communicate. You're trying to get something, as much as we don't want to say that. We're always like selling something or selling ourselves or
Right.
selling an idea or selling a concept, and I want you to buy it. And if I want you to buy it, then I might have to come from your side of things and say, hey, what do you think about this? And it might be a more clear message. It might be a little easier to communicate.
Yeah. Hey, Charity, you mentioned something. I think it was your PT did something like Reiki, and there's meditation. What is Reiki?
So Reiki is like energy healing, and it essentially is you pick out like the negative energy in someone, and you basically like absorb it and then put in good energy into them. And I think it's just the concept of it is just understanding that you bring an energy into every room that you walk into.
Yeah.
And when someone walks in and you can feel the weight of their energy, is just being sensitive to that. And it's like, okay, how can I pull this out of them and bring some light into their life? And just understanding that concept, and like he was such a light in my life of just pouring love and understanding and just letting me talk, and from a non-judgmental or like biased place, just listening, was so therapeutic for me, and it helped me understand a lot about myself, and then also helped me understand a lot about other people, and learned for me just to be a better friend, a better coach, a better worker, just like everything, just to be able to be in business situations. And like when you walk into a room, like you have to carry a certain air about you. Like you can't just walk into somewhere, introduce yourself to people and like have this terrible attitude and this terrible energy, because they're going to sense that, whether they're sensitive to it or not. Like something in them is going to be repulsed by you, and you have to be inviting, you have to be light as a person to attract other people to you.
So that whole kind of practice is all about, I guess, adjusting or making sure that you're bringing a certain energy to every single situation you go through, because you can't control the energy of everybody
literally
else.
letting go of negative energy.
Okay. Yeah, do you do any like other type of like, I guess, meditative practices along with that? Is that just, or how does that mix in with everything else?
So like, I'm a little weird. Like I do the whole crystals and like everything else. Like I'm all about it, because I believe that like when you bring in a certain energy, and like if I'm having a really terrible day, like if I just sit and I meditate and I really think about like, okay, what kind of like attitude and persona am I bringing into like the room right now? And like, I need to clean this up. And I think it's just the ritual of cleaning up your attitude and cleaning up your perspective and your mindset and your energy. And when you are so like in tune with who you are and you call yourself out on your own bullshit, like I think that's so healthy. And like you don't need crystals, you don't need Reiki to do that. But it's just like, that's just something that like helps to remind me to be a certain way.
It's putting you into that mindset.
Right.
Yeah.
It's just a reminder for me.
Yeah, I'm into some of that weirdness as well. I do think that it's part of the reason why Super Training Gym was created. It's like we need people to have like-minded thoughts to get the results that we're looking for. Even like today, for example, like as soon as we're done here, I'm getting out of here and I'm going to the beach, and I'm just going to be by myself for a day. And I'm doing like a dopamine fast, no phone, no music, just me and a book. And like, I've never done it before. So, and no food, no nothing. So just, I don't know. I just like to try different things.
Yeah.
And, maybe I'll learn something from it. Maybe I'll learn it was stupid.
Do some self-reflecting.
Yeah. Maybe I learned it's dumb and I didn't like it, but whatever, I'll still learn something, or maybe I learned something useful from it.
Those crystals, they don't know shit.
Yeah. And I'll be like, I bought the wrong crystals. What's the wrong one?
Don't do that. Don't let anybody touch them either.
Oh, then it gets all messed up?
Yeah. You don't want somebody else's energy in your stones.
Messing up my chi.
Oh, snap.
Damn.
Then you have to go through a whole sage and moon cleansing ritual.
We need
and
sage.
We do need sage.
That's
Yeah.
the second
That'd be
time today
sick.
sage has come to
Yeah,
us
yeah, that's true.
without us influencing it at all. It's the
Yeah.
second time.
It's a sign.
It's a sign.
You both do yoga. Like for you, is that like a spiritual practice too, or is it just for like? I mean,
It's like recovery for me.
recovery for you?
Honestly,
Okay.
like it just yeah, it's meditative, and like I think just knowing your body so well, and then like also knowing that like okay, like that's tight, you need to work on that, but like just knowing like how your body is functioning in a movement and like understanding like okay, that shouldn't feel that way, this should move this way. Yoga has taught me to be so in tune with my breathing and how my body feels that like when I'm lifting in the gym, like I feel more like that mind muscle connection.
In yoga, like they do simple practices. Like I think we can all agree that, you know, if you had like a lot of stress in your neck, that you're probably just stressed from like work and stress from the
Because
day.
you internalize all of that
Yeah, you're
through
just kinda
here. Yeah.
This all day long for whatever reason, right? And in yoga, they'll just say, you know, they just want you to like breathe through it. So they want you to think about like, they might say, think about relaxing your left trap. And it's like, you just never think about that.
Right,
Or
right.
relax your left shoulder, or decompress your left shoulder. And it's just a way to kind of just lighten up a little bit. And you're like, then when you kind of check some of that and you go through your checklist of things that are going on, you're like, why in the hell is that so tight? What the hell's
Yeah.
wrong? What the hell's
Yeah.
wrong with me? Why am I? You're just like holding on, like everything's just so balled up, and you're like, I need to really just try to relax. And so it is a really good practice. It's very similar to meditating. I didn't realize how similar it is to meditating until, but there's a lot of different forms of yoga.
There
Do you
are,
have particular ones that you like?
I like Invasa or like flow yoga. So just going into like one movement into the other and learning to connect the dots. That's what I used to practice like before I got into powerlifting. So that's kind of what I revert back to. Like they are the ones who like invented like the inversions and the headstands and stuff like that.
Yeah, that stuff's hard.
Yeah.
So how does somebody get going with some strongman stuff? You and I talked yesterday a little bit about how we just think it's a good idea. It's a good practice to implement. Like strongman and competing as a strongman athlete is like a separate thing. But even just in terms of fitness, even in terms of the girl that aspires to be built like yourself, have some good muscle mass, like how should they incorporate some strongman movements?
Well, it's really hard to even find strongman implements in like the average gym, right? And I think it's just having the concept of like a farmer carry is going to benefit everybody. We talked about this, right? Like we talked about this last night, but it's like, things like the farmer carry is like so basic, and you can do with dumbbells, you can do with barbells, you can do with like easy curl bars,
Plates.
like
Yeah,
plates
whatever, yeah.
or plates, just anything, kettlebells. But it's learning to contract your core, stabilize your spine, walk with your shoulders back, and you fixes your gait, but it develops so many good things about, your body and your stabilization. Just the concept of like interval training, that high intensity of like going from implement to implement and not giving yourself that break. And you've got like a certain time period to complete things in. What it does is it pushes you to like 99 capacity, but you're doing it in such a speed where it's like you're also getting like the cardiac benefit from it, and then you get rest afterwards. Like I think that type of training is so beneficial for type 2 fibers and just muscle development and power that a lot of people miss out on.
Some stuff that we were doing here in the gym, and it comes and goes, but like we were doing like farmers carries with some dumbbells, and then we would just do like a walking overhead press, and then it just kind of like almost making it up. There was no like science to it, just like, hey, let's pull or drag or push or walk with, 3 or 4 different movements. And we might like push a sled, but it's fun.
Yeah.
It's a lot of fun. And the variety of the way that you can push yourself is crazy, because you can do it for an extended period of time. You can say, hey, we're just going to go through this for as many rounds as we can for 10 minutes or 12 minutes. Or we're going to go as heavy as we can with this, which is a way different feel. And I think that it would be really wise for people that are that want to get into some of this. Just implement like one strongman movement at the end of 2 or 3 workouts per week. Just pick something. You could put a weight on your back and you can walk with it,
Right.
which would be like a yoke walk, or you can just hold some dumbbells and do a variation of it. Every once in a while, do it for a length, and every once in a while do it for
Weight,
to try to
yeah.
have some weight in your hands. Doesn't have to be complicated, right?
Right. No, and it could be so simple, but what it does is it just maxes out, your thresholds, so building up that work capacity of like pushing past your barriers of like, oh, well, I can only do this many reps in a minute. It's like, no, you're capable of doing a lot more reps in a minute than you think you are when that timer starts going. And I think doing things like that teaches you to push past that wall. And I think as a competitor, it's so important to learn to work past that wall that you hit, because we all hit it, and it's like that exhaustion hits and you're like, oh man, like how do I keep going? And then it's like it's almost like an out of body experience where you go into just overdrive. It's like, no, just keep moving. And when you learn to work past that, then it's like you get to the point where it's like, well, I've been there before, I can get through it.
Has the strongman stuff helped your body composition?
I'd say it did. Like, obviously, it increased my muscle mass significantly, but just learning to move dynamically with so much weight on me, and it developed muscles that, like, I didn't even know existed. And it just, so just building up, your bone mass, your ligament, your tendons, everything. Like, it just helps strengthen everything so much. And it's something that I can always go back to.
But just by having more muscle through your arms and your shoulders,
Yeah,
and your legs, your hamstrings, and things like that. I mean, it allows for you to not eat like a bird, right? I mean, you still want to follow some like nutritional protocols so that you stay healthy and so that you look the way that you want. But when you're getting after it and training like this, I'd imagine you can eat a decent amount of calories and have a little slack in the system. Is that right for you, or do you have to really, really hone in on your nutrition?
for me specifically, like I can like have like maybe one day out of the month where I'm just like eat whatever I want, you
Right.
know, or just like if I'm traveling, it's like okay, I'm not
Cheat
gonna
day or a couple of cheat meals or
yeah,
something.
like that's fine. But for me specifically, just because like in high school and stuff, I had so many eating disorders, I have to be super careful about what I put into my body. And I have to be super attentive of like the types of food I'm putting in my body. So honestly, like yes, with Strongman, it taught me that it's okay to eat more than 2,000 calories, and that was fantastic. But I had to make sure that those 2,000 calories were coming from things that were whole foods and not processed foods to be able to recover and perform the way that I needed to.
And those things might be triggers too, right? If you have things that aren't that are processed
Right,
foods, that might
right.
kind of lead you down the wrong path.
Like, we were saying this morning, like how I felt hungover from eating sugar and carbs because I've been so clean with my diet, since coming off the Titan Games that I like haven't allowed myself to have pizza or have anything sugary like that. And I've stuffed my face with Oreos, and I had pizza yesterday. And I woke up this morning and I was like, I feel swollen, like my joints feel stiff,
Yeah.
and I'm like, oh my gosh, I feel hungover. And it's like, you don't realize how negatively that type of food can affect you until you go without it. And it's like, yeah, it's fine to have, and obviously it's not going to negatively affect my body because like I'm so used to eating healthy foods, but it just shows me that it's like, okay, like I'm prepared that I'm not going to feel optimal after eating things that I'm not accustomed to.
Do you have any like fitness information online that people can follow? Like how are you able to lose the 20 pounds, coming off the Titan Games? And can someone look up some of that information of how you've been able to do things like that?
I don't necessarily post like, okay, here was like my regimen. Like if they want one-on-one coaching, I do all of that through my site, iamcharitystrong.com.
Oh, cool.
And I also share more about my story after the Titan Games because
You are fucking strong. This is so cool to watch. Like you're just
Crazy.
like, oh, it's 210-pound ball. It looks like it weighs 4 pounds.
one motion. I think that was like my biggest thing in like strongman is like log and stones were like my favorite. And
I think it's those knee sleeves.
yeah, for sure. But with stones, it's such a tricky movement, and honestly, a lot of the female strong women aren't the best at it. So I'm like that person that's like, okay, what are people not the best at, and then I want to be good at that. And being able to lift a 315 stone was like my goal, and to be able to do that and accomplish that and say that I did it was like the biggest thing for me because like that's like record, weight. And, so it's empowering to do things like that are so awkward and so difficult and so technical. That people don't realize how technical a stone load is.
I saw Jill Mills do a 300-pound stone at the Arnold Classic, and it was the coolest thing that I've ever seen. It was amazing. One of the coolest parts about it was that she got really stuck with the weight for a minute, and then she used her boobs to her advantage and got it up on her boobs and then chucked it.
Yeah.
I was like, that's a good use.
Yeah. Yeah.
Talk about racking a weight.
Well, but really, for me, it's like if I can just get it into my lap, I've built so much posterior strength that it's like I know I can triple extend and get it up. But it's in the initial pull onto your
feels
lap.
like 1,000,000
Oh
pounds.
my gosh, all the forearm.
Have you ever
upper
tried
back
that before? Any
strength.
stone?
I've never tried a stone before. I've always wanted to see how it feels.
You have
but
good
I've never-
mobility. You would be pretty good because you got to be able to bend really well from the hips.
And
I
then
feel like
unhinge your back. Everybody's like, "Oh, you're gonna hurt your back," and it's like you have to unhinge your shoulders to even get your arms around the stone.
I might be mistaken, but I read somewhere, do you have scoliosis? Or
I do.
how does how does this work?
So with scoliosis, it's actually so beneficial to train your back because if you don't, then you're gonna constantly be in the chiropractor's office and you're gonna need spinal surgery. Mine's not too severe. I've got a little bit of a C up towards my thoracic spine.
thought you were walking a little weird.
But it's slight, but it's enough that when I was doing strongman, it's painful. Especially doing things like yoke, it's very painful for me, and I feel the scoliosis, and it's a strange thing to say, but I do feel it sometimes, and only with severe weight. But you train the muscles to keep your bones in line, and if you don't, then you're going to be in the doctor's office a lot.
So build a strong back.
Yeah.
Shit, that's.
Do you track your calories or anything like that, or you just have a particular way that you like to eat, or how does it work?
I wish that I had just had a particular way I like to eat. No, I track everything, and it's so annoying for me.
You weigh stuff and all that stuff.
Yeah, I hate it. It's so tedious, but
it works for you.
I do it. Yeah, I do it. With every meal, I make sure I've got 4 ounces of meat. I've weighed my rice if I'm having rice that day. I even weigh my veggies, stuff like that. And a lot of people don't track their veggies, but I do. Just because I want to know how many micro and macronutrients that I'm putting in my system. The biochemist in me is very anal about that. And as tedious as it is, it's made a huge difference for me. And
do you do that year round, or do you have times where you just don't want to pay attention to it as much?
I think going forward, I'll probably do that for the rest of this year, just because I'm going to have to be more careful, because obviously my training is about to change severely. And I want to make sure that I'm getting all of the vitamins and nutrients that I have in my system to heal properly and come back. And also, if I'm going to be mountain biking and swimming and hiking this year, I need to make sure that my endurance is up. So, getting the type of nutrition you need for that is different as well.
Is this kind of just based off of your own knowledge, your own conclusions, or do you kind of follow something in particular from somebody else?
So I had a really fantastic nutrition coach, Jasper Price, and he helped me get ready for the Titan Games and then even lose my weight coming off the Titan Games. What he did is he taught me about my body and learned that, okay, I have food sensitivities because I did have eating disorders. And so there's certain things that I can't eat and I can't digest. And learning that about myself and learning why am I so inflamed? Oh, I can't have egg whites? What? Stuff like that. You wouldn't even imagine causing that type of inflammation in you. He has taught me so much about that. And just learning how to properly fuel my body as unique as it is. And going from there, I've been able to adjust my macros and just because he's taught me so much about how to take care of myself.
I heard you mention that some days you had carbs and some days you don't. Do you is that something that you did all the time with athletic competition, or did
in powerlifting I actually carb cycled a lot,
Okay.
Especially cutting for competitions, just have a refeed of carbs, and that was just jasmine rice. But carb cycling did well for a time, and then I had to switch it up. And just like Jay Cutler was talking about, you constantly have to change things up. But for me right now, consistency is key, and my body does well with carbs, but I have to time them correctly, and I have to time them around my maximum energy source so that my body learns to use carbs as an energy source instead of using it to like produce fat. And it's learning to like coach your body, like, okay, this is what this is for, and you're essentially teaching your body how to use food. And so I time things very specifically around when my energy is and like when I'm sleeping and stuff like that.
So you'll have like carbs like maybe 2 or 3 hours before you exercise or something like that?
Yeah,
That's
about
usually...
2 hours before I exercise, and then right afterwards, and then that's it.
Oh, wow.
Have you ever played around with any fasting?
I have. So I'm a fan of intermittent fasting for myself specifically, just because I get up so early that like I'm not hungry in the morning, and force feeding myself in the morning actually caused me to be hungrier throughout the day.
It makes me really hungry too.
Yeah.
Yep.
So I'll just get up, like I'll do my thing, and I'll probably eat around 10 or 11. And that's like the perfect time for me, because by then it's like, oh, I've got an appetite. And then I'll have like my chicken and broccoli, and people are like, why are you having that for breakfast? And I'm like, well, this is what I like. And I'll eat that for breakfast. And like doing that actually like helped me regulate insulin levels. It helped me like regulate, my metabolism, and even the hour window of like when I was capable of eating, so that, at night when I have cravings, like, well, I'm not eating at this hour, so I can't. And it eliminates like that possible craving, like, oh, well, I've got like 500 calories left that I can eat. Like, no, your window's closed. Like, can't eat.
Yeah, I think having a time a night where you stop eating is really wise. Limiting and potentially even eliminating completely snacking.
Mm-hmm.
Like have
a meal.
Yeah, have your food like mean something.
Yeah.
Now, if you're somebody who's just getting on a diet and you need a couple things here and there to help get you to the next meal, like a cheese stick or an apple or something, it's like that's pretty reasonable.
Right.
I could get on board with that. And I even sometimes will advise somebody, hey, before you leave work, have a protein shake, because I know that when they go home, they're going to be so damn hungry, they're going to raid the cabinet and end up eating stuff that they're not supposed to eat. But eliminating snacks can be really big. Paying more attention to the actual meals. A little bit of intermittent fasting, I think, would serve everybody really well, whether it's just a 10 or 12-hour fast, or whether you want to, take it a little bit further than that. And then in terms of like having your body respond well to carbs or fat, it always just kind of comes down to if you're overdoing it. If you're overeating, if you're overeating fat, the fat will probably more likely become fat. If you're overeating the carbs and you're in excess calories, you're probably going to store fat.
Yeah, key is surplus.
Yeah, and the same thing happens with health. And so somebody might say, look, a ketogenic diet, they did all these tests and they showed all these things it does for your health and what it does for your blood. And then they might say, well, they did a study with if it fits your macros and it looks like this. And it's like, hey, look, you guys are talking about the same thing. You're both talking about being somewhat in a caloric deficit, or just having control over your diet, and that's going to lead to a healthier lifestyle. So whatever diet you choose, start to make some rules, and I think shutting it down at a certain hour is fantastic, because that's probably the worst time of night that's the worst time of day for most people is, probably between 8 and 10 o'clock. They're eating something that they shouldn't be eating. They should be trying to put a stop to it and maybe start their intermittent fasting.
And their decision making sucks at night, so that's when they start eating the worst foods too.
Exactly. They want something that's like snack food, salty, sweet. That's when the ice cream comes out.
How do you like schedule your meals out? Because you mentioned like you eat at 10 or 11, and then you eat before and after. Is everything scheduled out for you?
It is now. So it was hard before when I was working for a corporate company, and like my appointments were like back to back, and like there were some days where I wouldn't get to food about 5 hours in between meals. And that was really, really hard as far as like my training goes. And now that I'm completely working for myself, I've been able to organize my appointments and my schedule in a way that I can eat every 3 to 4 hours. And that benefits me the best, because I'm able to train at certain times. Like everything's got to be scheduled for me to like get enough sleep, recover, all of that. And if I don't have that organization in my life, like everything else just goes to shit.
Well, it's great that you're sharing all this nutrition information with us, but a favorite song around here is from Trinidad James. You know that song?
Oh God.
And he says, "You ain't a lady unless you're 180." So you got to stay. You got to stay at least. You got to stay with at least within that range.
At least we're in that. Okay.
Yeah, it's
Well,
the 175 and up club.
no promises there this year, but yeah.
Where can people find it? Where can they find out more about you?
You can look me up on Instagram, charity_Witt, WITT, or you can look me up on noquitwit.com.
That is sick.
That's awesome.
No quit.
Thank you so much for sharing all that. Some of that was pretty heavy, but I think it will help a lot of people. So thank you for having the courage and the strength to share that information. Strength is never a weakness. Weakness is never a strength. Catch you guys later.